Canadian security officials say Alberta has not been the target of foreign interference, but the Green Movement has had its own United Front work department, and it targeted Alberta for years.
Well, I asked CSIS if we were a target or if they discovered anything, whether they would let us know. And the answer was no, which I find quite surprising. That we think that to maintain the integrity of our electoral processes, that the CSIS should be able to brief us so that we would be able to make people aware of the level of interference and be able to address it. So I know that there are other premiers who have suggested that the federal government needs to change the legislation so that premiers are also equally entitled to some of this classified information. But it would take a legislative change. And I think the hearings that we saw in the last couple of weeks demonstrate why you need to have more than one entity able to retrieve this information, because there's a bit of a dispute about who knew what about what and whether the information was passed on. So I can assure you I've not got any of that information. It is classified. They're not allowed to tell me. No one's reached out to let me know what it might be about.
CSIS told Premier Danielle Smith Alberta has not been the target of foreign interference. However, that assessment is not entirely accurate. It's just that the foreign influencer was not China. It was American colonial environmentalists. Now, news broke earlier this week that Chinese agents attempted to infiltrate a provincial leadership race in 2022. And no one told the premiers, including Alberta's Premier Danielle Smith, who ran an election during that time. According to Rebel News reporting by Alex Dhaliwal, an unnamed democratically elected politician vying for the leadership of their provincial party was to meet Chinese officials inside a Chinese consulate in 2022, as first reported by the Bureau. The classified intelligence assessment memo, published on October 31st, 2022, detailed efforts by China to influence leadership candidates at all levels of government. The chief allegations include Chinese officials arranging to meet an elected provincial official only identified as CA3. The report, however, did not disclose any names. Only the BC NDP and Alberta United Conservatives selected leaders in the June to October 2022 timeframe, described by the intelligence assessment. Canada hosts 4 Chinese consulates, one in Vancouver, one in Calgary, one in Toronto, and the last in Montreal. Now, Smith was told Alberta was not the target, leaving just BC as a possibility for the Chinese communist meddling. No surprise there. But what about the Green Communists? Even if the CCP did not target Alberta, this province has been targeted by communist foreign meddlers looking to undermine our democracy for years, and they infiltrated our government to some of the most influential levels. Look at this from the Frontier Center for Public Policy. For many years, millions of dollars from the San Francisco-based Tides Foundation, now known as Make Way, have been poured into Canada. The Tides Foundation's website claims since 1976, Tides has scaled more than 1,400 social ventures, fueled social change in 120 plus countries, and mobilized over $3 billion for impact. Some of these have been in Canada. Tide's approach has long been to fund grassroots organizations in accord with its purposes. Its influence for a time was largely opaque. That changed due to the research of Vivian Krause, whose digging through tax records and publication of articles shone a needed light. Krause uncovered the Tar Sands campaign launched in 2008, designed to undermine the development of Alberta's oil sands. The campaign strategy by Michael Marks, interesting name, of Corporate Ethics International had theories of change which included the legal potential to block vital links in the tar sands oil delivery infrastructure, potential costs to the industry associated with mitigation and legal fights, and a national carbon legislation that preempts tar sands oil. So to be clear, block pipelines, then make it too expensive and onerous to build pipelines, and then carbon tax the rest of us. And these people have done all that with help from within. Now look at this. The report details how they do it. Now, to do all this for Tides, funding Canadian NGOs was a very high priority, including the Pembina Institute, Forest Ethics Canada, EcoJustice, Greenpeace Canada, Sierra Club Canada, Canadian Boreal Initiative, the World Wildlife Fund Canada, and the Polaris Institute. Remember some of those names. Now, from 2008 to 2012, the president and CEO of the World Wildlife Fund Canada was Gerald Butts, the longtime friend of Canada's Prime Minister, who later became his principal secretary. The proposed tar sands campaign strategy was adopted by the Tides Foundation, the Rockefeller Brothers Fund, and the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation, and they did this to devastating success. Now, Rockefeller is currently accused of funding anti-Israel protests across North America, the same undermining of democracy and freedom, just for a different cause. On her website, Krauss shows the paper trail of over 400 contributions totaling $36 million that the Tides Foundation sent from 2009 to 2016 to 100 Canadian organizations involved in the tar sands campaign. Do you see the similarities here? These foreign-funded Canadian astroturfed green underminers are just like the United Front Work Department, the Chinese state-affiliated intimidation organization funded by the CCP to undermine and influence Canadian politics in the most sinister of ways.
The numerous examples also demonstrate that there was an orchestrated campaign of foreign interference in the 43rd Parliament and into the 2021 general election. The first category of threat is related to foreign funding, specifically the payment of funds by the Chinese Communist Party through the United Front Work Department to create specific products of misinformation on me as a member of Parliament and as leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. The second category of threat is related to human resources, specifically the use of groups of people working for or aligned with the United Front Work Department in Canada. They were organized and directed by a foreign state to amplify misinformation efforts and undermine my work as a member of this chamber and as leader of a parliamentary caucus. The third category of threat is related to foreign-controlled social media platforms. This category related specifically to the WeChat communications platform and its use to further the aims of the Chinese Communist Party and the United Front Work Department, and their campaign to spread misinformation to undermine and discredit my work in this chamber as the Member of Parliament for Durham and as leader of the official opposition.
And it wasn't just Gerald Butts. Former Tides Canada VP Sarah Goodman was promoted to Senior Climate Policy Director in the Prime Minister's office under Justin Trudeau. During the term of the previous Conservative Prime Minister Stephen Harper, these environmental interlopers were being audited. But wouldn't you know it, Trudeau ended all those audits soon after taking power. Oh, but it wasn't just the Prime Minister's office and Trudeau who were involved in the foreign meddling that targeted Alberta. Under NDP Premier of Alberta, Rachel Notley, the Alberta government was as enabling of foreign meddling as the Prime Minister's office was. She appointed foreign-funded meddlers to higher office as well. NDP Environment Minister Shannon Phillips wrote an anti-capitalist book with Greenpeace activist Mike Hedema. Forest Ethics, one of the named recipients of Tide's anti-oil foreign funding, was privileged enough to have one of its founders appointed to the Oil Sands Advisory Group by Rachel Notley to undermine and attack the oil and gas sector from within, and to do it all on the government payroll. And when the new Alberta Conservative government of Jason Kenney set about to examine the foreign influence allowed to attack Alberta by both Trudeau and Notley, EcoJustice and others on the Tides payroll took him and his government to court. So was Alberta the target of Chinese foreign influence? Maybe, maybe not, but we were the targets of foreign influence long before it was cool. And the Liberals and the left, they were also okay with it then too.
The CSIS briefing was really more about arming our cabinet and ultimately our caucus with tactics so that if somebody is trying to create kind of an inappropriate contact, that we're aware of it and we know who to call. Because there's a number of different state actors that I think we should be concerned about, and they have said publicly that Alberta would be a target. So we just want to make sure that our ministers and our caucus members and staff are aware of what they should be looking for in the event something feels like it's not on the up and up.
For Rebel News, I'm Sheila Gunn Reid. The attacks on the Alberta oil and gas sector, the blocking of our pipelines, and the killing of our jobs are all part of the Great Green Reset. To sign our petition against the green oligarchy and their attempts to control the way you live and speak, please go to nogreenreset.com.